Welcome to Greenhouse Grower to Grower, the podcast where we talk to growers from across the greenhouse industry about market trends, innovation, their biggest challenges and opportunities, and more. I'm Brian Sparks, editor of Greenhouse Grower. Later this year, Jerry Barron will wrap up his tenure as executive director of the IR-4 project, a USDA-funded program that facilitates the EPA registration of crop protection products for specialty or minor crops. Jerry has been involved in specialty agriculture for many years, and I recently caught up with him to talk about his background in pest management at The Ohio State University, how IR-4's mission has evolved over the years, and how he sees the crop protection industry continuing to innovate as it moves into the future. Here's our conversation. As you prepare for retirement, I want to take a step back and kind of talk about your background and then how your career in this industry actually got started.
As you may or may not know, I grew up pretty close to where Meister Meat is, on the eastern suburbs of Cleveland area.
Yeah.
I got involved in pest management pretty early. A neighbor of mine was doing yard work, and they asked me as a 13-year-old if I would water their lawn while they were on vacation. And I agreed to do it. And I'm watering the lawn, and out comes their landscaper to do some crop protection products. And he had asked me if I'd want to get a little job to help him. And I said, sure, totally legal for 13-year-olds to be working with crop protection products, but we won't go there.
Right.
So I started working with him, and just from that happenstance of watering the neighbor's yard, what really galvanized the relationship is I worked weekends, and he would take me into the local tavern. And while I would not be drinking alcohol, I was helping him make wagers for that week's football games. As most 13-year-olds know, what teams are good and what teams are not so good, a lot more than that. And I gave him quite a few good tips, and that kept me around for the job a lot longer, but they got me involved with working with pesticides.
Okay.
Believe it or not, from that beginnings, I ended up, going down to Columbus at Ohio State. I was one of the early people in their new integrated pest management program there. So I was involved in all three pest management disciplines, pathology, entomology, and a lesser extent weed science. Got my undergraduate in pest management area. Decided to stay on at Ohio State, but changed direction. I went to horticulture weed management. Figuring it was the weakest area. So I went and got my master's in horticulture weed management, studied with Stan Gorski, who was the vegetable weed management person at that time.
Okay.
I loved Ohio State, but knew I couldn't stay there forever. So I was able to reach out down to NC State and had an opportunity to study with, again, weed science with Dr. Tom Monaco here, who was one of the iconic weed scientists in fruits and vegetables.
Okay.
So I came down here to Raleigh and did my PhD. I graduated in December 1985, and January 2nd, 1986, I started my job with IR-4.
Nice.
So it was my first job. So, this January when I retire will be 40 years with IR-4. So it's been a fantastic ride. But, I had the background in horticulture crops, working in both the horticulture department at Ohio State and NC State, as well as getting the background in weed science, plant pathology, and entomology. So it really just seemed like a very good fit for IR-4.
Yeah. So at the time, was IR-4 kind of run through NC State? Because I know, IR-4's worked with, a few different universities along the way.
No, at that time, it was Rutgers University.
Okay.
So, when I graduated from NC State, I had to make the tough decision to move to New Jersey.
Sure.
I was going counter directional from everyone else because everyone else was moving out of New Jersey down here, but we moved up there, and I joined the Rutgers faculty. Not only was my job with IR-4, but I was also a faculty member in the uh, uh, plant biology department, as well as extension specialist department.
Okay, okay. How did you then kind of work your way, through IR4 as your career continued to grow?
So at that point, we were a relatively small organization. I think there was probably about 8 or 10 people at the national headquarters. I was hired as all things wheat science.
Mhm.
So that meant that I was having to do biology testing with wheat science, as well as studies with herbicides. So that's how we were pretty much broken up at that point. So that over time, as we gotten additional resources and some retirements, I was able to move up, get some promotions. One of the first promotions I received was to move up into the project planning area to really work with all the companies, work with all the disciplines to help decide what projects we're going to do in any given year. And the highlight of my year was going to the food use workshop and making sure that the priorities were set by the commodity groups as well as the scientists that are working with pest management and specialty crops.
Sure. Well, and you bring up a good point there. It's for those who listen to this who may not be all that familiar with IR4. I wonder if you just want to do just a quick summary of, what IR4 is all about, and really how it helps the industry.
Oh, sure. So IR-4 is a USDA funded program. We've been around since 1963. Our goal remains relatively the same since then, which is to facilitate the registration of crop protection products, i.e., pesticides, biopesticides, and other technology that it needs registration by US EPA.
Mhm.
Help facilitate that registration. Primarily, we focus in on taking products that the companies develop for major crops such as corn, soybeans, wheat, cotton. The drill on those.
Yeah.
The companies don't actually have adequate return on investment in the fruits and vegetables, nuts, herbs, ornamentals. So they're classified as almost orphan or better known as minor use crops.
Sure.
We serve as a facilitator of developing the data that's necessary by the Environmental Protection Agency to allow registration. We work closely with the companies, giving them the approvals from EPA, but then they go on and they actually register the product. So it's
Yeah.
we just fill that void because of economic needs.
Sure.
Companies don't see where it's important.
Okay. You mentioned briefly there biologicals, and that's one thing I do want to touch on here is, as IR4 has continued to evolve, as the industry has continued to evolve, how does IR4 look at, the emergence of tools like biocontrols as you're, working through product development for this industry?
So we were very early to the gate with biopesticides.
Mm,
Even, um, in the 80s, we were doing work with bios. In fact, one of the key things at IR-4 that a lot of people probably don't know is we facilitated the all crops um, approval of Bacillus thuringiensis
mhm.
back when it first came out as a pest control product and had to be registered. So
Okay.
this is frayable. It's not the biotech one.
Sure.
So we got that through, but probably what was more importantly is we established it was then called biorational program. It was before I started, but it was to go out there and we would be a unbiased, scientifically sound source of product performance data to really separate out the products that work and are legitimate through versus some of the products that were maybe being sold at that time that were just really weren't ready for prime time, really weren't ready
Okay.
to be a useful tool in crop production. So we'd go out there and we develop that type of data. Over time, our role and our involvement with biologicals have changed quite a bit. Uh, we now focus in on integrating biopesticides into conventional agriculture systems.
Sure.
And this is really to focus in on how biopesticides can help solve some of the more challenging problems that growers have with pest management, with regulatory issues. So, for example, let's say a grower wants to export techurities to Europe,
Mm.
and Europe has put restrictions on what pesticides they can use. We could go in there and increase the last treatment to harvest interval. So the residues of that product in cherries has dissipated to the point where it is now acceptable by the Europeans.
Mm.
And then we can go in there and replace that product, towards the latter part of the growing season with either another chemical pesticide that's allowed,
Sure.
or a biopesticide or some other product. Uh,
Okay.
but just to break up that, help get the growers access to these markets.
Sure.
So we're focusing on building bios into these areas.
Okay. And I know that kind of ties into, a lot of the educational efforts that IR4 is focused on. I mean, I remember the days, and that's not just for, for the growers as well. I remember when you and then your predecessor at the time, Bob Holm, would make visits to our offices at Meister Media in Willoughby, Ohio, where you would sit down with our editorial team and just talk through, here's what we're working on now. Here's what we do to benefit the industry. I'm going to assume that education is still a critical component of what IR4 does.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay. As you look forward, IR4 relies a lot on support directly from the industry, and I wonder, how the industry can continue to help support IR4 as it moves into the future. Especially as you look at, nowadays when you've got concerns about, you know, funding from the federal government for some of this research, some of these programs. How do you see that kind of evolving?
So I assume when you say industry, you're talking about the growers of fruits and vegetables and allied industries, or are you talking about the companies?
Really, it's a matter of both. I mean, I look at it mainly, I'd say, from the growers who are part of the industries, fruits, vegetables, and then I know we haven't talked much about, greenhouse floriculture, but I know that's a big part of what IR4 does as well. So maybe that's something that we could focus on is, within those organizations, how they can continue to help, support IR4's work.
So let me start with the commodity end of it, and I'll circle back around to the
Sure.
crop protection product companies. So with the commodity areas, we interact with quite a few major as well as small commodity group associations. We have a group called the Commodity Liaison Committee,
Hmm.
or CLC. It's about 25 groups are in there, which they go down to Washington and they advocate for IR4. They'll walk the streets of Washington, going into Congress, going over to USDA, going into OMB. So they're influencing many of the key uh, partners in Washington to
Yeah.
ensure that they're aware of not only what IR4 delivers to the industry, but how important IR4 is and the needs of additional funding for IR4.
Sure.
So that has been great. There's been actually a spinoff group from the Commodity Liaison Committee. It's called Friends of IR4,
Sure.
and this is really, I'll say it is people putting their money where their mouth is.
Mm.
So it quite frankly, when someone's going to go out there and say we're going to put out $5,000 to help pay for a professional advocacy group in Washington to really help manage this whole situation. That's been incredibly helpful.
Sure.
We can't use government dollars for something like that, but the commodity associations can use their resources to make sure that the messages are clearly heard by the powers to be in Washington.
Okay.
Um, it is a very large tent. So, if there's other commodity groups that would like to join, or each individual growers, there's that possibility to join. It's managed through Todd Schultz from USA Pulses, and
Okay.
I can provide you his contact points and
Yeah.
later. So if you don't know Todd, but yeah, Todd rolls between both areas, the Commodity Liaison Committee and the Friends of IR-4.
Okay.
As far as the crop protection companies go, quite frankly, they're facing some very difficult times right now,
Mm,
with sales being off because of economic factors that the growers are facing.
right.
um, their cost of data development continues to increase. They're having to do studies to answer a lot of regulatory issues such as endangered species mitigations, pollinator protection. So they're in a very difficult situation. But the crop protection companies continue to be a strong advocate for IR4 as well.
Mm,
Not only do they provide us, some degree of funding to help offset the cost, so we're not 100% federal, but they also, too, will analyze some samples on occasion or
yeah.
provide us other resources such as test substances, other um, help us with technical issues. So the companies actually, they contribute to this as well.
Yeah.
Part of the problem is every time you turn around, there's less companies to deal with, and
Sure. Yeah.
it keeps shrinking.
Yeah. Well, I remember, going to I had one chance to go to one of the food use workshops when it was in Cleveland. So, you had some of the companies were there, some of the university folks were there, and I don't wanna say it was like a contest, but it almost became that way at one point as we're talking through, here's the products, here's the projects we wanna focus on the most. I mean, and it's important because, I mean, there's not an unlimited pool of resources that you can turn to facilitate some of this. So that was always interesting for me to see.
Oh yeah, the food use workshop has been a wonderful aspect of our program because it really does drive home that we are a stakeholder driven process.
Yeah.
So you have this process going on. To explain it for someone who's never seen it, it's tough to explain. But you basically have controlled chaos,
Yeah.
and over 3 days you get from say 300-400 potential projects. You whittle it down to 50.
Yeah.
So and you get everyone who's in the audience to agree upon it. That's the magical part. So
Right, exactly. Well, and I haven't had a chance to go to the environmental horticulture. Does that kinda work the same way?
yeah, it'll a little bit different. In our environmental horticulture program is evolving. We have a new manager
Mm,
who came in earlier this year.
yeah,
We actually have our workshop next week in Kansas City for the environmental hort area. So it'll be his first rodeo of leading, the priority setting.
yeah,
But what we do in environmental hort area is it's based on project. So we will be, say, look at thrips on bedding plants, just to pull something out of my hat. So then we'll go out there and then we'll screen multiple products, both chemical, bio, merging technologies, mixes, so on and so forth, to find out what product is the most efficacious.
sure,
And then we, pass that data on not only to the companies, but we'll post that data so the grower community can look at our data, make choices on their own. What
mm,
products they want to use for that one.
okay,
Uh, it is a little bit different because you don't necessarily have EPA involved in the approval process. That
great.
obviously you have to approve the product originally, but once it's been approved, then there's a lot of flexibility what the growers can use.
Sure, sure. Yeah, how do you see the overall mission and the vision of IR4 continuing to evolve as it moves into the future?
So, one of the things that we've experienced over the last, I'm going to say, 5 years, maybe picking up more speed now, which is there's a smaller percentage of technologies coming out from the companies that are the traditional chemical product.
Sure.
And the traditional chemical products require residue studies that we're all set up to perform. More of the products coming out now are either biopesticides
Mm.
or emerging technologies such as messenger RNAi or messenger RNA interference. In
Mm.
fact, there's one approved last week for oilmites, just
Okay.
recently. And peptide chemicals, other emerging technologies that are coming out as well. And the traditional IR-4 chemical labs may not be applicable for this new products coming out. What
Mm.
is applicable is the development of unbiased, scientifically sound efficacy and crop safety data so people can truly decide this works or it doesn't work versus, the company may come in there with a advertisement saying in 3 studies, we found that this worked. And then, it goes out there and it doesn't work. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, they look at IR-4 data as being unbiased for that particular purpose, and we can provide that information. So we're seeing more work in that particular segment. Um, I have to look at and just seeing where things are going to come out. There'll probably be different types of monitoring we will need to be doing going
Yeah.
in future. So, our labs may be retooled to be looking at something different than chemical residues. It may be
Yeah.
protein analysis or protein monitoring or something of that nature. So,
You know,
that's the evolution I think we'll probably see going forth in the immediate future.
okay. I love having those types of conversations with, whether it's something in this category or like plant breeding is another example where you can talk to, I'll say the next generation of breeders, the next generation of scientists and how they're using the new tools that they have available for research in different ways that their predecessors would not have been able to do. So it's interesting to see how they can be the drivers of taking that technology forward to benefit the industry.
Yeah. Hey, one more thing. Let me just add into that one.
Yeah.
That's application technology, and
Sure.
that's changing as well. So with smart sprayers, with drones, with
Mhm.
other types of app, different applications, that all changing as well. That adds as another tool to utilize the products in a different manner, lower rates, more efficacy, lower, cost to the grower and very.
Yeah.
Uh,
But does that application technology factor into the areas that you then focus on? So if you have something, we want to facilitate this as a use for a grower, and then also we know that they have a better way to apply it, whether it's in the orchard or the greenhouse or wherever.
Right. So yeah, some of that is coming through in our integrated solutions platform where
Mm.
we're looking at all ways to solve problems and going in there. So we may be going in there and saying, okay, we're going to direct this just to the pest, and the pest is being identified by, artificial intelligence that's on part of the tractor.
Yeah.
Your application is much lower rate per acre than it is, if you do a conventional broadcast application.
Mm. So, we've talked through a lot about, what IR4 is, what it does, how it benefits the industry. I want to kind of go back again to your own, path journey through this process. Um, Looking ahead, actually, before we look ahead, taking a step back, what are you most proud of during your time with IR4, and then how you've seen the specialty crop industry evolve?
So to come out and say, oh, this one thing has been, the number one accomplishment, I'm going to go on and give you three.
Okay.
Um, the first one is crop groups.
Mhm.
And, when I first joined IR4 in 1986, my supervisor, my mentor, George Markle, he had been instrumental in writing a book, Food and Feed Crops of the United States, that served as the initial template for the EPA crop groupings.
Okay.
And back in 1986, the EPA crop groupings were pretty remedial. There were some things in there, say peaches equal nectarines, no brainer. Okay.
Yeah.
George and working with him, we came up there and we, had a vision to go out there and enhance and expand the crop groupings. We found a very willing scientist at EPA that wanted to be part of this process, Bernie Schneider.
Okay.
So we actually went out there and we wrote another book, Food and Feed Crops of the United States, Volume 2. Actually, Meister was the publisher of that book.
Okay.
But we went on and published this book. This served as the linchpin for the next version of the crop groups expansions.
Mhm.
So EPA took their very minor, rudimentary crop groups and really, blew them apart, expanded them, changed
Yeah.
things around. A lot more crops were added. Things were, looked at more on an international level. How can you anticipate as people from different countries are coming in? They're going to be bringing their different crops. How can we put these in crop groups?
Sure.
We have continued to do this all along. I mean, still a work in progress. We continue to do it. The crop groups now, they're up to 26. There's thousands of crops in these crop groups, but probably the most important part is, we've developed this concept of having a few representative commodities in these crop groups. And then we only develop data on these representative commodities, and then you get the entire crop group, or in some cases, subgroups, depending on the data, the uh, the motivation or the plans. This has been really a huge undertaking, but it has saved not only IR-4, but the entire regulated community as well as EPA, uh, untold millions of dollars just because of you're focusing on a little bit and you're able to extrapolate it out to a lot.
Sure.
The crop groupings that we've developed and worked with EPA to get approved are now more or less established carbon copy in Canada, as well as the IR-4 groupings as approved by EPA has been the base for the Codex crop groupings, which is more the worldwide crop grouping.
Mhm.
So it's been a huge undertaking. Obviously, I'm telling you, this has been a great accomplishment. There's been a lot of people involved in this thing. So let me just give a shout out to Bill Barney, who's works with IR-4, and he's been more or less riding herd on this one for the last decade or so. But
Okay.
we really, it's been a great accomplishment.
Good. Good.
The second one I'll call out is the all crops approval of, at that point, it was a new product called spinosad.
Mhm.
IR-4 working with the EPA as well as working with the registrant. And at that point, it was Dow AgroSciences, now
Yeah.
Corteva. We developed a scheme. We worked with EPA to articulate this scheme, and we went out, developed the data. A lot of like the crop groupings, a lot of extrapolations, but this was we'll call it super crop groups. So we took some of Corteva's data, we took some of IR-4 new data, and we put it in a bundle. We submitted to them, and we essentially got basically all crops under the sun approved for this active ingredient. And
Nice.
this active ingredient not only was very unique at that time, it was, a product from um, a bacteria from rum distillery, um, but it was allowed to be used not only conventional products, but for organic production as well. So
Okay.
this is a very broad spectrum tool, and it controlled a lot of pests. It did it well, and we got it on all crops. So that was a pretty good accomplishment.
Nice.
And then the third one is what we have done internationally. So, about 25 years or so ago, uh, I was invited to attend an EPA meeting with Canadian counterparts, Pest Management Regulatory Authority.
Sure.
And during the course of this discussion, we started talking about, well, it doesn't make any sense why we're doing data in United States and they're doing data in Canada, and there's not much difference, say, between Ontario and New York State, or Michigan and Ontario, or BC and Washington.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it just doesn't make sense. Let's figure out a way to work together. So we started working with PMRA. It evolved that Canada decided they were going to develop their own IR-4 system, and that is called Pest Management Center. It was modeled after IR-4, but every year we now do about 25% of our priorities, U.S. domestic priorities, are also Canadian priorities, and we'll work together.
Yeah.
So it'll save us a lot of money, but most importantly, is when these registrations are established both in the U.S. and Canada, it opens the door for U.S. growers to export into Canada without any major problems. So,
Yeah. Absolutely.
and vice versa. So it really truly opens up the North America market for U.S. growers.
Okay.
Uh, we saw that this was an excellent example of cooperation, leveraging dollars so you can get more for less, and from that it led to more of an truly international. And I was very fortunate to be a leader on the establishment of the Global Minor Use um, um, Summit. I was
Sure.
of the franchise there. I was the chair of the first summit and been involved in every subsequent summits. That led to the establishment of the Marty Use Foundation. And the whole idea is to take the IR-4 concept and have that duplicated in other parts of the world.
Mm.
And when our priorities align with the US, with these other parts of the world, we work in cooperation, and both or multiple groups get that approval at the same time at a lower cost. And it really does open the door for trade.
Sure. Sure. Okay.
Uh,
You know, one last question is, as you look ahead, as you take a step back from the industry, what are you most excited about when it comes to the future of this industry? And this could be, from specifically what you're in, but then also you look at, the markets that IR4 is involved in, whether it's, fruit and vegetable production or floriculture. What are you most excited about where those industries are headed?
well, I mean, the special crop growers, whether they be, edible or non-edible, they're incredibly resilient.
Mm,
They've been through challenges. They're running through challenges now. Specifically with labor, and other challenges. But I think one of the positives that are coming out from the "Make America Healthy Again" movement is, the messaging of, fruits and vegetables are food that we should be eating to be healthy. Yeah, to there. And I could see that the Maha movement could be encouraging a lot more consumption of fruits and vegetables, which in turn I would hope lead to better prices, a larger market, more resources for these growers to help them recover from some of the challenges they've had
sure.
in the future. So, I see that as, a positive going out with the Maha area. Um, you know, hopefully, Secretary Rollins, she, talks about expanding U.S. exports with fruits and vegetables. I think USDA has been really supportive recently of helping U.S. growers gain access to international markets. We've been part of the process to, remove pesticide residues as a non-tariff trade barrier. so we can export. So, I see that as a positive move going forth in the future, and how we can, get larger markets there. As far as the ornamental areas go, obviously high quality ornamentals, the different varieties, just the plethora of new plants, it's incredible. And we'll be there to help solve some of the pest management issues and help this segment continue to grow. No pun
Yeah.
intended.
Well, I got to say, Jerry, it's been great catching up with you, and just credit to all the work that you've done, that IR-4 has done over the years, and as we move forward, I know that whether it's through Greenhouse Grower, American Fruit Grower, American Vegetable Grower, Meister Media as a whole, will continue to be a supporter and an advocate of what IR-4 is doing on behalf of this industry.
Yeah, well, we very much appreciate it, and the support we've had over the years from Richard Meister, down, quite a few people have been in the organization, have been great to us, so we appreciate it. So thank you, Brian.
Sure, absolutely, and thanks again for taking the time to join me today. It's been a great conversation. Thanks for joining us. You can learn more at greenhousegrower.com. Please subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, and please leave us a rating, as it helps other podcast listeners find the show.